Good morning. Thank you for attending the Think of the Children panel for the Queers in Comics conference here at CCA. My name is David Kelly, and I've been doing comics for over 25 years. And most of my comics have been youth-based, I guess, or young adult-oriented. And that what brings me here to this panel. I'd like to introduce our panelists. First, we have the author of Skim and This One Summer, Mariko Tamaki.
Applaud, you guys.
And from Lumberjanes, we have Shannon Waters and Kat Leth.
Pride clap, everybody, pride clap.
And the next panelist is Brian Anderson, and he does So Super Duper and Rainbow and Diva. Oops.
Yay!
And I just want to give a little bit of more background about my comics. 25 years ago, I created a strip about a boy who wanted a Wonder Woman doll. I submitted it to several gay and lesbian newspapers, and it got picked up by a couple, and also a couple of alternative weeklies. And it was written from an 11-year-old boy's point of view, so it naturally got attracted younger readers, even though it was actually meant for adults, since adults were the ones who read the gay and lesbian newspapers. And years later, I was awarded a Xeric grant. I think it may have been the first gay comic to win a Xeric. And fast forward to 2011, when the strips were finally gathered in a book by Northwest Press called Rainy Day Recess, The Complete Stevens Comics. And it's gratifying to see my book on the library shelves in the young adult section. Especially since when I was young, I worked at the library, so that was always one of my favorite areas of the library. And more recently, I graduated from CCA here with my MFA in comics. I was part of the first class of the MFA in comics program here, and I graduated in 2015. My thesis project was called Secret Identity, and they were based on autobiographical strips ranging from approximately age 4 to 24. And I'm currently working on a project that was stemmed from that giant-sized edition of Secret Identity, and that should come out later this year. And first, I thought we would start by having some of our creators here read some of their work. So I selected this page for Mariko to read from Skim. Mariko?
Okay. So this is Skim. This is her diary. This is going to be obvious as soon as I start reading it. Miss Archer and I have this thing now where when we sit for our talks, Miss Archer holds my cast. Before Miss Archer was a teacher at our school, she used to live in a commune with a bunch of artists. She was a painter and a dancer, and she was studying to be a writer. Miss Archer says she can't stop looking at my eyes. She says they are very serious.
Thank you.
I wrote that.
And the page I selected from Lumberjanes, I think it's a flashback.
It is a flashback.
With Abby and Rosie.
Yeah.
Would you?
Abigail and
Rosie? Yeah.
are in their younger days. This is, for context, y'all, this is the camp director of the Lumberjanes camp, Rosie, when she was a young Lumberjane, with her beloved and nemesis, Abigail, who is a glamorous Grace Kelly type hunter/taxidermist of cryptids. Anyway, it's fine. Roll with it.
Yeah.
Do you want to be?
You guys both can read it?
I can't. Yeah.
Oh, you can't see it?
It's always letters beautifully, but okay. So yeah, this is a flashback.
Do you want to stand so
Yeah.
you get closer?
I'll do that.
Get right up close to your work.
mic, Shannon?
Oh, here.
I'll steal your mic.
Okay.
Here we go. Can y'all hear? Okay, here we go. Come on, this way.
Abby, we're gonna get in so much trouble if Nellie finds out we snuck out. It'll be worth it, I promise. And they're chasing fireflies. Ha 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 ha. It's over here. You'll get a kick out of this. Whoa. What do you think it is? I'm gonna switch sides. Here we go. There's something really strange going on here, Rosie, that's for sure. I thought we already knew that. We did help a centaur find her calf just last week. No, I mean something big, something ancient. I think we're here for a reason. Ugh, no, don't talk like that. It's spooky. Ooh, spooky. This is purgatory and we're all already dead. No. Ha. And then they hold hands. Because they're endgame.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Yay. Gay, gay, gay.
Gay, 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 gay. Super gay.
Okay, and Brian, we'll see if you can read the next one here.
You might want to sneak around. It's a rough scene from here at the
You
table.
could you could probably start on the third panel, on the first page here.
I stand from here.
Okay.
Third panel.
Well,
Okay. Comet, I was so totally worried about you. I thought you were all injured or something, and I felt way bad because, like, it's my fault. You even got tangled up with that loca lady. Sorry, it's hard to say. Oh, hush, silly. We heroes put our lives on the line every day. It's what we do. Besides, I'm a tad tougher than I look. I'm glad. I'm so happy you aren't hurt. You make me feel so safe. You'll always be safe with me, psych.
thank you, Brian.
Aw, cute.
And next, I would just like to talk about basically queer representation in these comics. And this page I thought was interesting. It brings up a gay character who actually never really appears in the book. Is that Marika? Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, so I mean, the idea of this book is that it's written about being a lesbian in the 90s, which is not like being a lesbian today for a variety of reasons. And so Skim, the main character, is in the process of falling in love with her English teacher, Miss Archer, at the book. And this sort of side story that's happening is this so-called boyfriend of another girl at her school kills himself, and one of the theories that eventually surfaces is that he killed himself because he was gay. And so for Skim, who's kind of trying to figure out, you know, I mean, it's all very Canadian and understated and Japanese, I dare say. So it's kind of about Skim kind of, the closest she can connect to this idea of being gay is to listen to these theories of this boy who's died. And so she's sort of sussing that out. And ultimately it's sort of about her confronting the rumors of this and sort of taking a stand about it. In comparison to the other girls who are just gossiping about it, it becomes something really personal to Skim. So when they do this thing where they set these balloons off into the air to sort of celebrate the death of this boy in this weird way, or commemorate, not celebrate, sorry, that's the wrong word, commemorate the death of this boy. And it's kind of her chance to sort of speak to him directly in her own way, as she's kind of figuring out her own stuff.
Thank
And
you.
beautifully drawn by Jillian Tamaki.
Yes, definitely. And then from your that one summer book, you have these relationship between these two girls, and they're not necessarily gay or anything, but they are aware of lesbians, and I just wanted to comment that I like the way that you, even though it's not necessarily like a queer comic or identified that way, but you do bring in supporting characters, or even as before, characters you can't see that are queer. And for me, that kind of with the characters talking about it, it kind of makes them a little more, I guess, sophisticated. They're aware of their surrounding and the people around them.
Yeah, well, there's two interesting things about this. One is that this is the only explicitly queer content in this one summer, and the book was still banned for having LGBTQ content, so that's hysterical. It was banned, well, it was challenged in Texas and Florida,
It's the number one.
and it was the most challenged book this year in the United States. 2016, number one.
Yeah.
First Canadian book, number one spot. I'm totally thrilled, obviously. And the other thing is that Wendy, the character of Wendy, is gay, and so it's not said. No, she never talks about being gay because she's just like a little kid, and she's kind of swallowed up by her best friend's obsession with boys and stuff like that. But I love that it was banned for just basically this one word, where the word lesbians appears twice, and somebody was like, "Well, that's too much. I can't have that."
And I feel like when I read it for the first time, I immediately read Wendy as like, boom.
Well,
Queer. I was like, oh yeah, absolutely.
we were at a convention in Texas. We were in Texas, and this kid stood up and asked a question, and this giant football kid was like, I had noticed in reading the book that it seemed to me that one of the characters was clearly LGBTQ, and I was wondering if you could discuss that. And Jillian and I were like, yeah. Thanks, kid. Random kid. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And then the next slide, Mariko, is from your, I guess, mainstream work. This is from The Hulk and Supergirl. And I noticed that you had supporting characters that are queer. Do you usually, for your mainstream work, is that a common attribute you do?
I always put a gay in there. Always. Hulk, the thing is that when you get a mainstream series, you know, they're obviously very hesitant to just let you take the reins of the character's sexuality. So you kind of have your mainstream characters, your main characters you can't really move. So I am obsessed with the gay best friend. I think the gay best friend is a character that I'm slowly moving to the center. So Bradley is not Bradley, whatever his name is. Is it Bradley?
Yeah.
It is Bradley. Is the gay assistant to Jen Walters in Hulk. And then Dolly is actually my favorite character my favorite lesbian probably that I've ever written aside from Skim. And she's just me funneling all my favorite lesbianness into this teen character. And I love her. And she's drawn by Joelle Jones, and Joelle just gave her, I mean, you can even see I'm wearing short shorts and leggings, so it's like, I'm like dressing like Dolly. And she's also, I always make my gay characters like the smartest ones. So that's, or close to the smartest ones. So that's who Dolly is in this book too.
Can I say too that I love both series, but I like that you say dyke in Supergirl.
Yes.
Like I think it's so powerful that you actually say the word dyke in the book. And for a Supergirl book, that's I think rather strong and powerful.
We had a discussion about it because they were like, "Ooh, can she say dyke?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, she can say dyke. She is a dyke." And then when I did an interview for a newspaper, which shall remain nameless, when I was describing the character, they took the word dyke out of my interview and they wrote like redacted, and then they put in square brackets lesbian. So they took the word dyke out of my interview and put lesbian in instead. Which I was like,
I think it's important to have those words, right? And to own those words and to have them in the book. Like
Right.
It's so strong for people to read that and see that it's okay for her to be called. And it's an empowering word for her.
yeah, what's better than that word? I love that word. Come on.
So there's no chance of the Hulk becoming a lesbian then?
No, you can't mess with that stuff. You have to keep it as is.
Right.
Unless you're willing to one day it would be cool to definitely have somebody say like, yeah, just take this character and do something like that with it. But
Right.
I was so lucky with Supergirl because they let me do whatever I want. I wasn't gonna push it. I was like, yeah, she's white and straight. Let's just keep that. That's cool.
Was Marvel a little more, I guess, hardcore with the rules, I guess, than DC, you think?
Everybody's hardcore with
Yeah.
the rules.
Yeah.
Until they're not. Until like one thing lets them be not.
Yeah.
And then they switch it up.
Okay. Thank
Does
you.
her shirt say unbelievable stud proxy?
Yes, it does.
I want that shirt so bad.
I know.
Actually, I love her hat.
Unbelievable stud proxy. So Dolly writes her own shirts, and so all of them say something interesting. And my main goal for going to San Diego Comic-Con this year is for someone to show up dressed as Dolly with an Unbelievable Stud Proxy t-shirt on. That would just be,
That might be me.
come on, that's so
I
cool.
just want an unbelievable stuff Roxy shirt.
Oh, I want it so bad.
Okay, next I'd like to talk about Lumberjanes. This is a character, Joe.
Yay.
And Joe with her fathers, and I was hoping that Shannon or Kat can talk about this.
Oh yeah, Joe's dads, the rocket scientist dads.
No, here we go. Yeah, Joe's rocket scientist dads. We love Joe's rocket scientist dads. Kat's been doing a lot of Parents' Day writing of.
That's right. That's out. I can talk about Parents' Day now.
I think the first issue, right, guys? Is the first issue of Parents' Day out? Yeah, I think so. I mean, Brooke kind of drew them as a Tony Stark, Captain America ship situation there. But yeah, we really, Joe has gay dads. That was something that was kind of, we knew that from the beginning. Joe and her gay dads. I don't know. Do you have a question about why?
So is Joe is a trans girl? Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Joe's dads are very protective of her and her intellect, and very, very, very encouraging of wherever her journey takes her, except perhaps to Lumberjanes camp, because it's not. She could be going to Rocket Space Camp, anyway.
She needs to be preparing for her future as a genius.
Yeah, as a
15-year-old rocket scientist working at NASA.
spectacular genius.
One thing I like about Lumberjanes is just the diversity of characters, and another character here, Barney.
Yeah. Yay.
And I was hoping you could speak about this one too.
I mean, Barney's genderqueer. I love this scene. Kat, if you want to talk, you wrote this scene, so if you want to talk about kind of using a queer kids comic to talk about pronouns, which is what this does.
I was really excited to get to Barney's story because they were really set up at the end of 17 with the conversation that they had with Joe, and I was just like chomping at the bit to get Barney into Lumberjanes, and we wanted to have them be genderqueer and to have they them pronouns, and I wanted something to be really casual and easy for kids to understand and not make it a big to-do. So I just had a quick English grammar lesson in there. And just like that, it normalizes their pronouns and makes it not a big deal, which is, I think, good for kids to see and to have context for gender-neutral pronouns.
Yeah.
But I
Right,
think
yeah.
also it's nice for it to be not, I think that there's a weight to the way queer issues have been brought up so often
Yeah.
where it has to be a crying scene where you have two people like, hey, I have to talk to you about something. And then another character's like, what? It's like, I'm gay.
And the after-school
You know?
special music starts to play.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like there's going to be angst, but it's never going to be because someone's struggling with, oh, I'm gay. It's always just going to, it's going to be something else.
We really wanted queerness to be that was something that was a non-negotiable when we were developing Lumberjanes and kind of starting to write it and stuff. We wanted queerness to be just so normalized because the nice thing about camp is that it is a way, it's away from it is separate. It's of the world and separate from the world, and for the Lumberjanes, at Lumberjanes, at Miss Quinzella's, I'm not going to try and pronounce it. I still don't know. I made up that word.
Easy for you.
And at camp, queerness is, and among this group of friends, queerness is normalized. And the function of that is that for kids who read that and see that, then, it can become normalized to them too. And that was really important to us for the book in general.
Right. I noticed earlier that it seemed like Barney had a little trouble, I guess, navigating early. People were saying like, you don't belong here, or you need to go back, or to your camp, or things like that.
Not less that.
They had a thing with Joe.
With Joe, like the thing that they had with Joe was that Joe was struggling with a little bit of jealousy of Barney's friendship with April, who is Joe's best friend since they were little kids. And I think Joe saw a little bit of herself and her struggle, and her earlier struggle, and in Barney and what Barney was going through, and was kind of trying to figure out how to process that, and what it meant that April wanted to be, good pals with Barney, and that was the setup for the conversation that they had at the end of 17, and where they talked about that.
I think it really is the next evolution, because I think also by not making it issue oriented and not making it something that they have to always talk explicitly about, like that has to come up as a plot point every time. That is the next evolution of queer comics, is that we're not constantly like, we have to address this character's gayness, or we have to, it's just like, there's kids at the camp and they're gay, and you'll know because they'll be, holding hands, or they're gonna smooch later. I love the word smooch in comics, and I love whenever the word smooch in general comes out, it's just like such a great moment where you're like,
smooch is such a great word. Smooching is just, I love that word.
That's a good segue for our next topic. I noticed that kissing is a big deal in some of these the comics. And so this is from So Super Duper, where he receives his first kiss, I believe, his first.
Yeah, his first.
Yeah.
Boy on boy.
Yeah.
Kiss.
Would you want to talk about this, Brian?
So he's this is kind of a angsty character where he's all internalized and is obviously very gay and queer and kind of femme, and tries to deny it, which I based off myself growing up. I try to deny my queerness for most of my life, even though everyone would always, call me on it. So I kind of developed this character like that, where he was clearly gay, but he didn't really realize it yet. And so as he is being saved by the man of his dreams, Captain Idol, he gets his first kiss. And he kind of saves him and returns him back from being turned to this fairy form back into his normal human form. So it's like the kiss saves him, basically. A queer kiss with this crush saves him.
Right.
come on.
And then from Lumberjanes, I really adore the relationship between Mal and Molly. They seem each have they're a couple, and they've even gone out on a date. And
several.
Sometimes they have their individual self-doubts, or they're not sure the proper way to do things or something, and the other one kind of backs them up a little bit. And I thought that this page was good at explaining that.
Oh yeah, I mean they're rock solid, Molly and Mal. Their relationship is like a cornerstone of the Lumberjanes Foundation. Before many other things, we knew that.
I knew right away that they were a couple. They were always seen together, and
always holding hands, and always it's
destiny.
It is kind of destiny. It really, in the case of Lumberjanes, it really is. It really, again, it was just important to us to have, you're like 13 or whatever age the girls are, and you have crushes, and you have like boyfriends or girlfriends, or you have people that you like in that way, and that's totally normal. And queer kids will have crushes on other queer kids, and that's not, I think, like Mariko said, like the next stage is kind of examining the fact that our queerness is not tied to sex. You know, LGBT content is not inherently sexual. And you know, these are two kids that like each other, like each other.
Right.
And we wanted that to be normal. We wanted them to be there for each other.
Yeah, and never a scene of having to figure out if the other
Exactly.
person is also queer. It was pretty much just right. They were both on the same page with that,
Yeah,
which
exactly.
was refreshing.
Exactly.
Did you get any sort of reaction, like especially to the last panel of this page?
Mostly good.
They're so cute.
I think
The color is amazing. Who did the color on this?
oh, that's Marta.
Oh,
That's
it's
my
so
girl,
good.
Marta. Marta has colored all of Lumberjanes and is exquisite. She is exceptional. I mean, I have not heard, outside of the occasional like internet troll or whatever, the only time that I heard about like real pushback, and it has stayed with me. I think about it often. The real pushback to the queer content in Lumberjanes is in issue number 20. Are you guys all caught up? Issue 20, Mal and Molly kiss right on the mouth, right on the lips. And it's the first time that we had shown them explicitly kissing in the comic, and I agonized over. It was like, oh, you know, should it be like a huge event? And no, it shouldn't be a huge event. They smooch all the time. But a mom came to the booth right after that issue came out, and her coworker, she was buying comics, and she's like, I want to buy some comics for my coworker's daughter. And she was like, yeah, she's not allowed to read Lumberjanes anymore. And I was like, well, thank God that I got 20 issues of queer in there with that kid, that poor kid. Yeah, like it's already over. She already saw the kiss. But it has stayed with me, and we really, with that kind of, because queer kids see it, right? Like they see themselves in the touches, in the cheek kisses, in the hand holdings, in the conversations between the girls that are explicitly, you know, that are, I guess, subtly queer. They see it. And it was really, really important to us that that content got into the hands of kids who needed it, even if their parents maybe didn't necessarily condone what you know, queerness in kids comics, or queerness in general.
You should buy them it for them, because if you don't, they will probably spend their allowance on it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, it's very tricky because on the one hand, I think like Raina Tegelmeier's drama, which has these two boys who eventually fall in love. That's a spoiler. Sorry. Sorry about that.
Okay.
But has been banned a lot, and it really like you don't even see them doing anything. So I think the notion that you can create a content that will sort of slip the gay. Oh, sorry. That's unfortunate what I was about to say. That will slip the gay past, you know, the sort of the adult eyes that don't approve is, you know, I kind of feel like there's a point where I feel like I'm going to just sneak this in so that it gets through. And then there's a point where I'm like, I'm tired of sneaking it in so it gets through, and it's going to get banned anyway by the group of people that protest will protest to, you know, Abigail and Rosie holding hands as much as they're going to protest to two people kissing on the lips. So might as well, you know,
might as well go for it.
Might as well go for the lips. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and isn't that funny that we had 20 very gay issues of Lumberjanes? Those are very gay. But it was one panel of two characters kissing, and then it was done.
Right.
It was like, man, that's just like, it's just such an interesting point of view of the world, homophobes.
Yeah.
It was such an interesting way of looking at the world, homophobes.
But the kids, when reading up to like number 20, I mean, you know, it's not as if they're not going to search out
Exactly.
one, you know, as soon as, you know, they can get their hands on it someplace.
Well,
Sure.
exactly, and that's, I guess, that's the thing, right? It's like, you know, we kept it, kept it until 20, and then kicked them all off the boat. But it's like it's very interesting the way that you have to kind of ride that line, or have to, or want to, I guess, so that it can get into the hands of these kids. It's very interesting.
Did you have people ask you about the smooching? Do you have parents come up and talk to you about the smooching?
Well, I don't think I have as large a readership as you all, but I did have some buttons one time at a comic book convention that had the two boys kissing on it, and kids love free stuff, and their buttons were free, so they kept coming to my table and grabbing the buttons, and I was like, yeah, sure, you can have this button, I don't care. And then finally, one of the moms was like, oh no, that's not for you, and she threw the button down on my table.
How dare.
And I was just kind of taken aback because, again, it's not a sexual thing. Kissing is not necessarily always a sexual thing. It's just two boys kissing. And it just struck me as surprising that they would want to limit something that was cute and colorful that a child might want, a free button.
I think ink smooth is more appropriate than saying just kiss.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, it's more comic-y.
It's more comic-y. It's a lot,
Super
little
comic-y
fun.
word.
It's a little fun.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, when I'm not doing Lumberjanes, I'm an editor at Boom Studios, and I publish a lot of books that feature queer characters, kind of just being queer, like there's a mystery occurring, and then queerness over here, that have boyfriends, girlfriends, crushes, where it is not. The struggle is not the focus of the book, and the queerness is not necessarily the focus of the book.
That's almost what they object to,
Ex-
because the thing is, you've normalized it, and they would rather that people are anguished and are upset. And
Exactly.
It's a big deal, and kind of like, oh my God, that weird person over there.
Well,
they
and-
feel weird, they know they're
Mhm.
weird, versus when they normalize it, because that's the queer agenda.
Well, and that's the goal, is to normalize it.
Right.
It's
It's
That's
also,
what they're really afraid of. So
Well-
it's almost like when it becomes normalized, the people that are radical and crazy about, we don't want to see this with our kids, they really object to the fact that somebody has lesbian moms and they're accepting, and the kids see that. And it's
I mean, there's a lot of things that people object to, and I think it's very complicated. And I think that there's a variety of things that go through the head of a person who's banning a book in terms of how they think it works. I think that people think that if you get rid of the language, if you don't have someone saying lesbian around you, that lesbians won't exist. Which is a fundamental, if anyone's ever read Foucault, misunderstanding of how language actually propagates. Actually not talking about sex actually creates this whole other language around sex, smooch and stuff like that. So you can't erase it. And I think the idea, at the same time, it's a pushback. The time that you have the most conflict is when change is happening. That's what conflict is. It's pressure around change. So I think the reason that you have all these books that are getting banned and that are getting removed from shelves are because that you have more queer content out there. So there's more books to be banned, and it really is just it's a learning curve.
Can I just say, my husband and I have a 3-year-old daughter, and we kiss in front of her, and we don't make out or anything, but we'll kiss each other frequently, and her response is, "Oh, that's cute," or "Oh, that's nice." She says every time. So for us, it's again normalizing. We are normal, right? It's not weird for us to kiss. But for her, in her eyes, it's just a reflection of her parents, and she sees it as a cute and a nice thing. And then she grabs us both and makes us both hug her as a family hug. So I just feel the more we showcase who we are to everybody, children and everybody, the better we are as a society.
Sure.
Okay.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
I always think it's so funny that they always they don't act as if it's sexualizing when they have it's cutesy little memes all the time, little postcards and stuff. 1 or 2-year-old boys and girls holding hands and stuff.
Of course.
They're kissing with a little flower and everything, and nobody goes, "Oh my God, they're so sexualizing them." But as soon as
Look, The Hunger Games. The Hunger Games is a book where teenagers are forced to murder each other on a remote island, and nobody has any issue with that.
Right,
right?
because
The Hunger Games is a book about murder, and
murder
everybody's
and
just
violence is okay in our society.
yeah,
sadly.
murder's totally chill. We're fine. But then Mal smooches Molly, and everybody's losing their shit.
And then the next kiss was probably the most controversial one, if I can get it. Skim and
That
Ms.
kiss.
Archer. Now, Mariko, from what I understand, did Jillian actually come up with this
No.
page? Or
No,
okay.
but I just wrote, I, clever writer that I am, just wrote Skim and Miss Archer kiss. And actually, it was funny because when I wrote it, we originally wrote this as a mini comic, and Jillian and I had never worked together and actually didn't really know each other that well because Jillian lived in Calgary and I lived in Toronto, which is kind of like living in Illinois and New York for Americans who don't know anything about Canada. When we did the mini comic, this was sort of very close to the end of the story. And I hadn't talked to Jillian about the fact that I was including it, and I was just like, I hope that's going to be okay. It's kind of a key part of the story for me. And then when I saw that she was going to do like the double-page spread of it, I was really happy because I think it is this very, it's the thing that distinguishes it from just a story. It's a distinct part of Skim as a love story for sure. Although the whole point of the graphic novel is it's not the sort of the last thing that happens to Skim in the book. But the best part of this is that the book came out and we were touring with it, and I went to this Federation of Teachers and did a talk, and they were like, I want to talk to you about the dream sequence where Skim kisses Miss Archer. And I was like, what dream sequence? And they were like, well, clearly that's a dream. And I was like, no. That really happened. In a fictional book, but yes, that really happened. And I think it's meant to be uncomfortable. It's not like, it's definitely a relationship between two people that is not an appropriate one, in that one is a teacher and one is a student. And so it's definitely framed that way, but it's also about, being able to realize your desires, which is, for this character, a pretty big deal. So it's a really complicated kiss, and lesbians and straight people have very different views of this kiss. I have many lesbians in my life who are very upset with me that Miss Archer and Skim didn't end up running away together at the end of the book, which I was like, she's like 16. Miss Archer is like in her early 30s, so that's not really, although it did when the first mini comic ended shortly after the kiss, and then when we got the graphic novel deal, I was like, oh, I guess I have to write like what happens after that. And I did spend a good week thinking, like, could they run off together? Like, can I write this story where Skim and Miss Archer are like in Vegas and they start their own pottery shop and everything works out? And then it's not how it ends, but I think it was super important to me to just have this moment where it wasn't fantastical and it wasn't imagined or dreamed, or it wasn't about this unrequited love, but about somebody having that like happen to them, I guess. Although it's also true that, so I went to an all-girls private school, which is very much like the school that Skim goes to, but I did not kiss any of my teachers. I want to go on the record and say, I never kissed any of my teachers, now or then, ever. But I would go to my school all the time and people would be like, so who's Miss Archer? I was like, nobody. It's a fictional book. They were like, come on.
Sure.
Come on. Yeah. Who's Miss Archer? And I was like, first of all, it's really disturbing that you would just find that titillating, because if it really did happen, it would be like a lawsuit. Like, it would be a pretty big deal, but
I feel
anyway.
like there's a pretty rich tradition in lesbian fiction of like the Miss Archers of the world
Yeah.
coming in.
This is my Japanese-Canadian version of the Miss Archers of the world.
Yeah.
I just want to say on record as a lesbian, I do not like that trope.
Okay.
And I support your decision to not.
Well, it is like, I think it is, the point is like, I think the point, the goal of Canadian literature is often to take the things that we love and then to just make them a little bit dirty and complicated. It's like that, so that you can't just enjoy them.
Oh yeah.
The point of the book for me after sort of getting to this scene was to sort of say like, yeah, like the next part of this, for people who have complained to me, I say, well, you see, like then the rest of the book, Miss Archer then completely cuts Skim off, clearly sees that she's made an error in judgment, and the way it progresses is, the way I thought like, okay, well, if this teacher did kiss a student, what would happen if both parties were sort of people that I might know in my life, like, regular people, I guess. Not that the word regular is a good word. And I thought, yeah, it wouldn't work out. It would be this moment that the student would be completely obsessed with, and the teacher would be like, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna move to Buffalo, and then or I'm gonna go to Mexico, and I'll see you later. That's what happens.
It's a pretty nice layout because you can see everything very clearly.
It is.
The background's like all grayish, and then the people are like all black.
They are.
Well,
Yeah.
and, you mentioned it being like Jillian making it a spread, and I always tell young when I'm doing like portfolio reviews or reviewing young writers' scripts, I'm always like, oh, you gotta find your thesis, like, because they'll put these insignificant panels in these huge, just like making it a huge part of their page, and I'm like, that means something, like panel size, and like that means something when the reader sees that this moment is a spread. It connotates that, the bigness of that.
Yeah, I'm actually working with Rosemary Valero O'Connell, who you've worked with, on a book. She's so lovely. So she and I are doing a book together called Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me.
It's the best title. Oh
And
my
it's
God.
so that's my actual lesbian love story that I fully lived many times. And the double page spread that she chose is so good. It's one of those things where I was like, it's like, as a comic book artist, it's your like, oh yeah, whatcha, like it's such a move.
Yeah.
And she timed it so well in the book, and so I really feel like, yeah, this was the first time I realized how much you could do, because I also love that there's no text on it, and it's just this moment, and you have no idea what really happens before or after. You just get a second, and then it's gone. Yeah, the double page spread. There's so much. You should do a whole panel on the double page spread.
And on, like, I am so I am so passionate about that, like, really, because I think so many young cartoonists are like concentrating on getting to the next panel so quickly.
Right.
And it's like, no. The reader literally see, like, the impact of how big or small you're making a moment, literally how big or small you're making a moment, the reader picks up on that.
Yeah, and you can also kind of undermine it because it's a huge moment, but nobody's talking about it. And it's a huge moment, but it's in these woods, and it's kind of shrouded. And what you actually see is more like Skim's face than Miss Archer's face. And so it really says so much without saying anything, which I think, all my favorite comics are where you're like, what is happening here? Oh my God.
It's funny because of the movement of the leaves and everything, you've almost got a soundtrack by looking at it. It's like when you look at it, you feel the time because of the leaves moving and everything. You can get this whole atmosphere, and I think that adds to this feels like something's happening and this time's going by.
Right.
And they just got the water and everything. It really it makes it like, you could imagine it being like 5 minutes long, in
Right.
30 seconds. In just because of what's in this picture, and it has the space for it.
Sure. Also, if we're accurate, the soundtrack for this image is Enya's Orinoco Flow. If we're true to when it was written and the time that it's covering, it's fully Enya's Orinoco Flow, which I think adds a whole other layer to the story, if you know that. Yes?
Playing when you were creating it, or that it was probably playing?
No, in the 90s, because this book is set in, I think it's 1994. In the 90s, I was obsessed with Enya. I was obsessed with Enya, which is unacceptable, and Tori Amos, which is mildly acceptable, and I played them interchangeably all the time. And so I did probably, when I was writing this, go back to Enya a little bit, just to like get back in the mode of that mindset.
If you went to play parties or if you did massage in the 90s, both of which I did, you so overdosed on Enya, you can't just even.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh no, now I have.
No, I still think it's
hearing the wind in the woods, and I'm like, oh my god, Enya.
sure.
Do you?
It's okay. It's good to know.
Does anybody else on this panel because I do that all the time. Like, I'll hear when I'm writing something like a scene, I'll be like, oh yeah, this is the Go-Go Girls Head Over Heels. It's playing over this scene. Like, do you guys do that? Do you ever? I know.
I mean, yeah. Specifically for Lumberjanes is the only time, but I had this whole like punk girl playlist that I listened to in a loop because it was the mermaid. Mermaid punk.
Right.
Yeah, your little Bratmobile, Little Heavens to Betsy.
Slater Kinney.
Yeah. The Rebel Girl was the song that I Yep. And then the song that the mermaids sing at that rock concert is basically a riff off of Rebel Girl, only it's Mer Girl because they're mermaids.
And well, actually, in Lumber Girls, they compile their own CDs and songs.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, and-
Grace Ellis, one of the co-creators of Lumberjanes, she is an exquisite mixtape maker. I have never encountered somebody who is as good at making mixtapes as Grace is, and therefore Grace, for the first 8 issues, when it was a miniseries, Grace did literally she'd hand make with construction paper these and like watercolor and stuff, these beautiful little mixtape covers, which if you ever are lucky enough to receive a mixtape from Grace, that's what she does on the mixed CDs that she sends you. They're like little zines, they're like little collages that she makes for her covers. But yeah, music is so important.
It is.
So important. That was one of my, when I was a teenager, China Clugston Flores, who does Blue Monday, that comic was very important to me. She does literally she'll, in the margin, it'll be like the Smiths, and so you'll be like singing that song to yourself while you're reading the scene.
Yeah.
And she makes like the soundtrack text, and I love that. I love it. It feels really.
And also in
dynamic.
Lumberjanes, similar to pop culture references, but there's references of female names that pop up, like
Yeah.
Holy Sister Rosetta Tharpe or
Yes.
Holy Anna Smith Peck.
With the Joan Jett.
Yeah. And there are a couple I recognized, like Joan Jett, of course, and Tippi Hedren, but then I had to look up the other ones. And I was
Good.
why do you do that?
Oh, because it's funny.
It is funny.
It's funny. It's very funny. That was a Grace Ellis innovation from in Jo, the original Jo from Little Women. She goes all the time. She's like, Christopher Columbus. And Christopher Columbus is an asshole, and we didn't want to do that. So we thought it would just be funny if we did these people shouted important feminist lady names. And the great thing about it is then girls look up these amazing
Yes.
heroes of feminism and learn about them and their achievements and carry that into the world. Look at that. And also it's very funny to be like, what, the Joan Jett? It's just funny. It makes you laugh. Tee-hee. I think that Holy Bell Hooks is my favorite joke.
Holy Bell Hooks is my favorite, and right. So I'm working on a middle grade prose version of the Lumberjanes right now,
Very good.
and writing those where you're just like, so I'm so sad that one that got edited out because I was like, for whatever reason it just didn't fit. Was I had what the Amy Poehler, and we had to take it out, and I was like. But now no one will be saying what the Amy Poehler.
We'll say it. We'll say it from now on.
I know, right? What the Amy Poehler, you guys.
We'll be like, thanks, man.
Although you have to look up, because the one thing is I thought, because there's some people that I know that I was just like, oh, I'll just do this person. And then I was like, unless they've done something horrible at some point. So I'm Wikipediaing them. And then you go into there's always a Wikipedia section where there's controversies. And you're like, I can't use that name.
You have to be like, oh man.
You do, you have
they
to,
were secretly racist.
Yeah. And scene. But it is, I do think it is one of my favorite. I think it is also, it's such a queer thing, right? It's like a lip sync number in the middle of a book to have this, to pull in this analogy to a feminist or, queer writer or what have you. I think it's really great.
And also in Lumberjanes, I don't know if this is right or not, but I noticed the main or the 5 characters that began the book: Jo, April, Ripley, Molly, and Mal. I noticed Ripley, that was Sigourney Weaver's character from Aliens. Is that where the name comes from?
Absolutely.
Okay. And April, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Actually, yeah, I think so. Grace wrote this up one time. Jo
Oh,
is
okay.
obviously from Little Women.
Right.
Ripley is obviously Ripley. Mal and Molly, I think we wanted just alliterative name. There is explanations for all of them. They were kind of I'm not speaking into the mic like a real chumpster. They were essentially kind of, their original concepts were this mashup of the tropes of the Babysitters Club, like the very broad strokes tropes, and a group of 5 people that we knew personally. We like smashed them together, which is it's a fun fun character creation exercise to do something like that. But yeah, the names were chosen as a tribute to many lady.
Really, the power of comics is putting your friends' names in there.
Yes.
So,
Really.
Jen Walters in the Hulk works for a firm called Rue, Barber, Zucker, and something else. Because my friend Sam Barber helped me with New York locations for the book, and I was like, I'm going to make you the name of the law firm. He was like, perfect. So it's like you can get trade these favors. Like if you go get my groceries, the name of the character will be your name. If you fix this thing for me, I'll make you the best friend. Except then you kind of run out. Then you have to pick up a lot of work doing other stuff. Or then you'd have to make sure, sometimes I'll say to people, if you want your name in there, it's possible that you'll die later. So you have to be okay with that.
Yeah, so April, this is a nod to April from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, red hair, obviously. But Mal and Molly, Grace explains it. There's an old theater trick of dressing characters who are related in the same colors. For example, a father-daughter pair might wear the same pattern fabric so an audience associates them together. We wanted to do the same thing with Mal and Molly, so it was clear from the beginning that they were a pair. So we went with 2 names that sounded similar that weren't too similar. Also, something that can be turned into an easy ship name, Mally.
Oh, that's good.
And then, Rosie, obviously, is Rosie the Riveter. That's where that name came from.
Okay.
And if you look at her, you can
Yeah.
see it. And then Jen, we chose because it was the most straightforward, boring name.
And there's so
possible.
many derivatives of it.
Exactly. Again, funny jokes.
I only have one more question left, and then we'll start with Brian on this one. What advice do you have to people who want to make all ages queer comics?
Brian?
I would say do it. Don't dream it, just do it. And I'm an independent comic book creator publisher, so I would say it's not always easy just having your own motivation to write and create something and put it out there by yourself. But if you have that burning desire to tell a story, then get it on paper and get it out there, because you never know how far it'll go. And I started doing this I think 10 years ago, and now I'm sitting here on this panel with these amazing women. So it's just you never know what you're going to accomplish, but if you don't do it, no one's going to have the chance to discover what you write. And like Dave said previously, I don't write necessarily for youth, I just write a story. And if it happens to fit within young adult or all ages, then great. And if it doesn't, then it's not going to be in that category. But you need to write, you need to have your truth, and you need to follow your truth, and you need to write from your perspective and what your reality is and put it out there.
Okay, and Kat, you have another book as well too, don't you? Bird Witch?
Yep. Yeah. Bird Witch is actually the first comic that I ever did, actually really related to the just do it aspect of making comics. Is I posted it all on DeviantArt in those days, in the DeviantArt days. And it was, it wasn't really anything in specific when I started it. I wanted to draw some really dynamic flying scenes. One of the characters is a witch, a little witch, and then her friend that she meets in the woods has bird wings and bird legs, and they become friends. And I did a few little comics about them. And it's not, Nina the witch is raised by her 2 uncles, her 2 gay uncles. And I mean, it's not anywhere in any of the comics yet, but both of the girls are queer. Of course they are, because I made them, so they're queer. So it's very queer friendly, as is everything, but it's not the point of the book. The point of the book is the fun supernatural adventures that they go on. Are you seeing now why maybe I work on Lumberjanes now?
Do you have any advice for creators seeking to put their work out there?
DeviantArt's a little old now, but Tumblr's great. I post comics on Tumblr. That's just people will make web comics and they'll find their audience because it's so easy to do now, to make your own stories and to put them online and just put them out there. People just, one person can do an entire comic on their own and it'll find their audience, and I think it's easier than ever before, even easier than the days of zines, to get your stuff out there and to get it seen. So all you need to do is just do it, really. That's the hardest part.
Yeah. Shannon, do you have any
an
words
editor
of
too,
wisdom?
man.
Well, yeah, no, I think I'll talk as an editor. So I hire many writers and artists, and I develop series with them, and I seek out various writers and artists for work professionally in the quote unquote mainstream comic market. And yeah, I think that the advice of just do it is especially apt here. I do not hire people that have not done comics before. I don't hire people who I can't see their work on their website, that I've seen that they can do sequentials, not just pinups. A lot of artists are very proficient pinup artists, and they think they can get a comic book job just essentially drawing really beautiful single panels, and that doesn't work. Like, editors won't see that and want to hire you for quote unquote mainstream comics work. However, if you're out there and you're doing it, you're doing the work that speaks to you and that feels honest and true to you, that work is going to continue to get better and better and better the more you do it, and it's going to find an audience. If mainstream comics work is a goal of yours, it will find its way to the right people if you're putting yourself out there and you're putting your work out there. And like, it really is, it feels like such straightforward, simple advice to be like, you just got to make comics, but that, unfortunately, the only way out is through. Like, you have to do it. You have to sit down and tell stories that are important to you. If you feel like, man, my writing's just no good, like I can draw beautifully, but I can't, like, find a friend who wants desperately to draw but can't, and do stories with them. Some beautiful partnerships have sprung up that way. And for God's sake, put your email address in an easily viewable place on your website. Please, just please do that. If you're doing amazing work and somebody wants to pay you to do that amazing work for them, and they can't find your email address, editors, we're very overworked and sad, and it's very hard for us to really seek out your email address. Don't make it hard for us to give you money, please don't. Makes me sad.
I know I didn't have my email address on my site for so long, because I was like.
Well, when you get to a certain stature, though, too, you can take it off. There's like
come find me.
Yeah. Like there's a certain. But if you're just starting out and you want to be hired, make sure that you're site. But if you're like a big deal already, man, do whatever you want. Like, live your life.
Yeah, go live your life. That's my advice. I think it is really. It's such a tricky thing to do, and I think it's so hard to know, like, when what you're doing is actually good. Yeah. I think it's a very hard thing to know. I wrote for years. I had been writing for like 8 years before I wrote Skim, and most of it is pretty bad. And I think that it is, like, I love this Ira Glass quote where he says, the problem with being an artist is that your taste will develop before your ability. So you know that what you're doing is not as good as you want it to be. Like, you know what it needs to be, and it is not that thing. And I think that is such a hard thing to push through. And I think it is a stopping point for a lot of artists where they're like, this isn't good. Like, I tried and I did this other thing and it's still not good. I would say that for me, a real game changer was that I took our writing class. And I took a college writing class that was taught by this amazing woman named Ann Dector, who was mean and honest. And I used the word akimbo once in something I wrote, and she was like, never use that word again. So she was a really great, and it was the beginning of really understanding the importance of an editor. People think that comics are created in this vacuum of like a bad studio apartment full of cats, and that's partly true. But really, a lot of the creative process is a connection that you find with someone else who can help mold your work as you're doing it. I have amazing editors in all the different kinds of work that I do that I 100% depend on to be like that other perspective in your work, and who help me make it better. And I think that is, it's not necessarily something you're just. Also, you can't just. The way editing works is you can't just go and show your work to someone and be like, "Is this good?" And they'll be like, "Yeah, it's great. Go ahead. Everything's fine. Move on." Next level. It's not like a Super Mario Brother, like where you find the mushroom and everything's cool. It is a process of like revising and finding either an editor or a friend or sort of like some level of academic environment where you can work on your stuff. And it seems like a hassle when you just kind of want to get a comic out there and get it published and it'll be great. But trust me, as someone who had my earlier not so great work published, you want to work on it first before you publish it. There's like 500 copies of my first novel out there floating around that if I could destroy each one, I would. But yeah.
What the akimbo is my new phrase.
Akimbo.
What the akimbo is my
I think the phrase was, it was a lesbian poem, and I think the phrase was arms akimbo, and this woman I was working with shuddered when she read it. She was like, woo, oh, that's bad. Never write that again. And I was like, what does it mean when your arms are outstretched? She was like, just say outstretched. Don't ever say akimbo again. So I haven't.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think everyone like that likes to draw or can spend more time drawing and writing, because the more time you draw and write, the more time that the reader wants to stay and keep on reading more of your book.
Well, and you get better too.
Yeah. The thing with comics is that, like to your point, it's not about drawing something really well. It's about drawing something really well hundreds and hundreds of times. So it has to look like the same character every time. So you see these like beautiful character sketches and you're like, that's awesome. Now do that 300 times from various angles with various emotions. And so, I mean, I really am inspired by not just Jillian's work, but also Kate Beaton's work and the sort of like shorthand of really knowing what's happening with very little detail, which is...
Yeah. Have you read James Kochalka's The Cute Manifesto?
No.
He argues, he argues against craft. That's his it's essentially the argument against craft, because James Kochalka he's a well-known cartoonist, especially well-known for his journal comics. He did a journal comic every single day for 15, 16 years, something crazy like that, and put him online an amazing amount of time. He basically is like, you have to be able to get something across honestly, and that's the most important thing. And you have to be able, like Marika said, to do that 1,000 times. His argument was it's less important that you draw, like, quote unquote well. It's that you get that honesty, that honest emotion across, that storytelling across.
Yeah.
Every single time you draw. Like, every single time you draw a panel, you're getting what you want across. So it's interesting.
Two schools.
Yes, two schools. Yeah, do both. Yeah.
Do we have any other questions?
There's
from the
one on
audience?
the side.
So I don't have this fully formed yet, but you guys talk a lot about normalization when you're presenting your characters and addressing their sexuality or their budding sexuality. And so I'm wondering if there is, or if you have examples of or thoughts on introducing a character's queerness without making the whole story about it,
Yeah, some people.
Yeah, I attended two lesbian conventions in that one year spread. So I guess that, I'm not sure about the question yet, but I'm currently writing a character, so I want to put that in there, but I don't want the whole story to be dominated by it, and I don't want it to also not be there.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the way I approach it is there's comics, there's two things. There's narration and there's conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Narration is when you kind of get to make these big statements, but I try to make them, it can't ever just be, like in Supergirl when they talk about the fact that Dolly is gay, she talks about the fact, it's not that Dolly is gay, it's that she has parents who are obsessed with Dolly Parton and she's gay. So you're never just gay, you're always gay in a bunch of other things. My parents weren't obsessed with Dolly Parton, but I'm obsessed with people who are obsessed with Dolly Parton. And also, I think you always, it's like with the Lumberjanes, like you have to think it's always a conversation between characters, and you have to think like, there are contexts. Like I've definitely had, conversations with people that have been about very specific things like sexuality or, like trans issues or what have you. But then you have to think about like, why is this coming up? Right? Like, why is this happening? It can't ever just be because I need to introduce this part of this character. It always has to serve multiple purposes, as all conversations do. Like, one thing I always think is there's always the thing you're talking about and the motivation behind what you're talking about. And I think that that's where the most interesting conversations come up is, like, when you're in the grocery store and you're talking about like gluten-free pies, but you really want to talk about your relationship, like that's like the money shot for me of like where things get super interesting.
Well, I always felt like too, for instance, like Miss Marvel is Muslim, but it's not about her being Muslim, right? It's just an aspect of her character. And so I think in terms of queer characters, we should probably approach it maybe similarly. If it's not a story about, I'm gay, let me tell you why I'm gay, but the character happens to be gay, if you approach it the same way where the reader knows these are elements of who makes the character up, but the story is not about his gayness or her queerness. It's about the character themselves. That's just one more shade of who they are.
Yeah. Well, and we, when we were introducing Joe's kind of like the way we're making the text of Joe's, being trans to the reader, we wanted to do it in that way, where because Joe is essentially, before anything, like kind of a quiet, brilliant child genius, and also trans. Like, and we wanted it to be a very gentle way of explaining it, because it was part of like her conversation with this other questioning teen, which we thought was just like a lovely way to do it because it came about naturally in the story.
Yeah, and you don't always need to, in the story, have a character reveal that they're gay and have that be like a moment, because that's not necessary if that's not what the story is about. People will just have conversations throughout their day-to-day life. People talk about actors that they have crushes on and musicians that they think are cute, and there are ways to have a character be queer without making that a story point or making that a conversation. It can just be something that gets dropped like it does in real life every day when queer people talk.
Exactly.
And like not all queer conversations have to happen with queer characters. Like one of my favorite conversations in real life is I'm doing this informal poll to find out how many straight men I know would sleep with Paul Rudd. And I feel like that is this very queer conversation that I've had with a lot of straight men in my life. Well, straight, obviously. And I think that it is about like the idea, like it's like there's that sort of like, I don't know if anyone here has seen Go Fish.
Oh yeah.
Raise your hands. Respect. Okay, so the thing about Go Fish is everything they talk about is gay. Like they're always just in that place. And I think that that's kind of like a 90s version of the conversation, and now it's a little more nuanced, more complicated. So every once in a while, I'll be like in a Go Fish place where I'm like, whoa, this has become a little bit like we're like sort of talking it out in this very sort of, it's not, there's nothing wrong with it, it's just there's something kind of like static about it. And to sort of think like, yeah, whenever you're having those conversations, I'll like stop, turn off the Indigo Girls, go for a walk,
What,
that kind of thing.
what are your findings on this study?
Many.
Yeah, I
many
figured.
men. Many men. Paul Rudd is like this intersection in the universe.
He's just he's a gentleman.
He's a gentle man with what seems like a really positive attitude, and that's really appealing to a lot of people. Yes, I know. If you want to carry on the study and then
Yes,
let me know your
100%.
findings on Twitter, please do, because so far I'm like 12 for 12. Like it's really, it's a unique place in history.
He's a very accessible boy.
Oh,
Yeah,
who was next?
Yeah. Yeah, I think
In the back, in the very back, and then in front?
Yes.
Very back first, and then in front?
1, 2, 3. Perfect.
Sorry, I was trying to strike a balance.
No, you're great. You're fantastic.
My question is about the editing process that you were describing, and when is the appropriate time to try to get your stuff in front of a serious editor? Is it, I have a project that's like 84 pages in out of probably about 150, and like, I'm like, do I need to like get this all edited now, or do I wait until I've written all the pages?
For comics, it is sometimes difficult if you come in with something that is like, I have scripted this whole thing, and handing it, unlike prose where you're essentially 70% of the time you're expected to have completed a manuscript if it's your first book before you go and try and sell it. Comics is a little different because the process is so labor intensive and expensive that it can be difficult to throw 84 pages of script down on somebody's desk and say, do you want to publish this? If you feel like, okay, I've written 84 pages of this and I know that I want to try and get this project published, then the best thing that you can do is make a essentially 1 to 2 page pitch sheet. You should be able always to be able to sell your project to an editor, and by sell I mean like kind of encapsulate what your thesis is in 1 to 2 sentences. It's called an elevator pitch. It's so named because, golly, you're delivering it in an elevator while your editor is on his way to lunch. So
Or
you
her
know,
way to lunch.
yeah.
Her way to lunch.
I was using the old timey voice.
Yeah, you were using your
I was
old-timey voice.
I was using the patriarchy in my example.
It's a patriarchal elevator.
But you should, when you're putting any story together, really, but your comic together, you should really know what it's about. And by that I mean like zero in on just exactly what readers are getting with your book. And that doesn't mean reducing it to the simplest elements. It just means figuring out what is the most compelling point of the story that you are telling, and be able to deliver it.
Is it kind of like the hook? Like
It's the hook.
You give the hook. Like,
It's the hook.
Why do
You
I want
gotta
to read
know the
this?
hook.
What makes you want to pick this up?
So you want to make essentially a pitch sheet that has the hook. It lays out the plot, and a lot of young writers will give me pitches that essentially feature the lead up to the graphic novel that they want to pitch me, but not what's actually happening in the graphic novel. Like, make sure that the story that you're outlining is the one you want to tell, and include essentially your pit, your elevator, a paragraph about the work, maybe some character descriptions, but just make it really easy for an editor to look at that and go, you know what, like, I know what this project's about, they're going to, if that catches their interest, they're going to learn all of the nuances and the subtleties and the depth of your project. But what you're trying to do is go, I'm telling a story in a way that it hasn't been told before, and I want to I want to do it with you, and so that really is what you're shopping around. As far as when you're ready to do it, that obviously varies from person to person. As a writer, like you're 84 pages into this graphic novel, like
if you want it to be published traditionally, it sounds like this is something that you have already committed to. So I would say, yeah, you're ready to start getting feedback from people and getting feedback from editors on what you're doing.
Oh yeah, 84 pages.
Yeah,
start getting some feedback for sure.
Exactly, start getting some feedback. That's the biggest thing, because you will be asked. If you're coming into a publisher and a publisher sees your pitch and likes it, you're going to be asked to tear apart those 84 pages.
Yeah. Don't fall in love with those 84 pages.
Don't fall in love with those 84 pages. Like, just don't.
They say kill your darlings, right?
Yeah. And especially, especially when you're coming in with comics, because again, the upfront is so expensive, because you're not just paying in advance to the writer. You're paying in advance to your artist. You're paying in advance to your colorist, your letterer. So the tear up process is significant. You're not just selling a manuscript that's going to be torn apart. Your concept is also probably going to be ripped apart as well. It's great though. It's good. It means that it's going somewhere.
We're making it sound so much fun. It's really fun though.
It is fun. I like the term, but I'm an editor, so that's.
You're a good editor.
Well, thanks, buddy. But yeah, like you really should start getting some feedback. Like that's the point you're at right now. Is like start getting feedback from other comic book writers. If you'd like, contacting editors, and really, for your sake, even just your sake, zero in on what you're trying to do with this story. Like, zero in on it. You have to know it in your bones to be able to sell it into like mainstream comics. And then
green shirt.
Green shirt, yeah, it's you.
What we think is green shirt?
Yeah, it's you. Yeah.
It's you.
Yeah.
Hi. Yeah. I'm a lesbian cartoonist.
Rad.
Awesome.
I first of all want to say I wasn't planning on going to this panel because I knew I wouldn't get here on time. I flew in kind of late last night, but I'm really glad I did. First of all, because I didn't know that Lumberjanes would be featured, and it's something that's been on my radar for a while that I haven't yet. But it's something that I see highly praised, and it looks great. That's
It's
something
great.
I should be reading, and I just haven't gotten around to it. So I'm excited that this is pushing me to do that. I want to say that thinking of the children is something that I've done a lot my whole life. I'm in my early 30s. I came out at 16, like in 2000. Back when it was starting to become a thing where kids would come out, like teens, to a very accepting neighborhood and family. But I was like, I wanted to do Pride and things like that, and I felt like nothing was speaking to me as a teenager. It was always like, if there was gay comics, it was like porn, or X-rated stuff, and there was nothing that I could relate to, and usually it would be male-oriented porn. And I would go to Pride, and it would be like, sex toys galore, and I'm like, what if I just want to meet other people who happen to have the same interests as me, all this other stuff. I know that other stuff is important, but I feel like it's being kind of all smashed together, and I'm just 16, and I don't really know where to go. So I feel like comics are such a great way to tell those stories and to reach out to people, who don't want to necessarily fall into that segment of gay life right then.
Who aren't ready for porn?
Yeah.
Or
That's how I think of it.
and I appreciate that, people get upset over a prince and a prince kissing, but a prince and a princess, who cares, at age 4.
Sure.
And I want to thank you for that personally. I wanted to give a public shout out for doing what I want to do and creating space. My question though is, what if you're putting comics online on Tumblr and nobody's looking at them?
You have to make them get online more.
Yeah. Well, get a Twitter.
And
Start following all the cartoonists you admire. Just go for it and start posting art on Twitter. Twitter's a great. I hate Twitter, but I also love it. But wouldn't you agree? Like,
you have to just do the work. I mean,
yeah.
you have to also. the way to get your work seen is not to just go on and be like, I want to go on Twitter so people can see my work. You have to go on Twitter because you have an interest in being a part of an online community of artists.
Yeah.
And you have to show interest in the other people who are on Twitter and the work that they're doing and liking their stuff and retweeting their stuff. And then getting them to be paying attention to the things that you're doing. You have to go on Twitter and say stuff and not just post your work. You have to go on Twitter and have your point of view be known on Twitter. This is all so much fun, and it's so productive. But you really have to become a person, and then you have to, I mean, I think that there are people who, like I'm following Michael DeForge's comic on Twitter right now, and it is one of my favorite things, Richards Valley, which if you're not reading it, it is one of the most genius things on Twitter right now. But, you know, I think that you can't just go on and start posting panels. Although posting individual panels of the work that you're doing is a really nice shortcut to getting people into a story. So if he's doing it as he's like posting like a panel a day or like a mini comic a day of his work. But, you know, like every other artist I know, he's also just on many artists that I know, like Kate Leth. Kate Leth is on Twitter like 90% of the time, right? So and she's also obviously working very hard.
Well, and Kate's, I mean, I gave Kate her first job in like mainstream comics, and it was because I liked her stuff on Tumblr.
Yeah.
And she tweeted, "Man, I'd like give my left arm to draw a story, or no, I'd kill a baby. That's what it was. I'd kill a baby for the chance to draw a Marceline comic." And I was like, "Hi, Kate. I'm Shannon. I'm the editor of the Adventure Time comic. Please don't kill a baby. Just draw a comic for me." And it's just like it was as simple as that. Like I liked her, like what she had to say, and I thought she was funny and cool.
Yeah, go online and see the comic creators that you see that you like and that you know as a social media presence, and then, you know, it sounds like trite, but just do what they do for a little bit, and then eventually you will find the thing that is the thing that you do. Like I am a poster of weird jokes, like dad jokes online is like my specialty.
I love your dad jokes.
I do dad jokes and I do periodic mentions of things that I'm doing, and that's my Twitter jam. But you have to find your own. But I really do think like if you want to be seen, you have to vote. Like my girlfriend Heather Gold, who's incredibly smart, told me once, like, yeah, post 10 times a day. Like just take a period of time and post 10 times a day. And it really is an effective way.
Anything. I post a lot about Harry Styles. Yeah.
On Twitter.
Also just keep drawing comics. Like don't just keep trying to fish around like one comic. Just keep drawing comics, because if no one's looking at it yet, you might just need to get better. And you get better by just keep drawing them and not don't worry if they're not getting noticed. Just know that every time you do something, you just get a little bit better and a little bit closer, and that's how you eventually end up getting noticed.
Oh crap, is that time?
Yeah, we only have time for maybe one more.
We had one more question. There was someone on this side of the room. You.
Go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. I'm a comic creator and a self-published writer, and I have an idea about a children's book about a trans character, but I'm worried about not only pushback from parents, but also from the trans community, and because I'm not trans, I'm wondering like what your take is on creating work that is sort of outside your own personal experience.
Talk to people whose experiences you value in that area, and talk to. It's not their job to educate you, but if you have a friend or somebody that you know and trust that you can have those conversations with, like talk to them.
You can hire sensitivity writers.
I was gonna say
you can pay trans people who will read your work and tell you if something is an issue.
Yeah, I mean, we with the arc where essentially, I hate to say Joe came out because that's not what happened, but with that arc where we were dealing with Joe's feelings regarding Barney, we hired awesome lady May Rude to come in and read those scripts and give us feedback. Paid her money. She came in and gave us feedback, and that's really important because her experience in that area is much more valuable than my feelings about that work.
Well, and know that that criticism is hypothetically going to be there.
Yeah.
I think the thing is that if you're writing about a group that hasn't had a lot of their own stories published, and then you go ahead and publish a story about that there is a possible reaction, which is for people to say, like, I don't like this, for a variety of reasons, and that's something that might be part of. I mean, the precursor is, do your research and pay people to help you if you don't 100% have that experience. And then the other part is, it's complicated,
Yeah,
and
it
you
is.
might get some pushback from people, and,
And I mean, be willing to listen.
yeah,
I would say.
be a listener.
Yeah, I would also say maybe don't try to write about kind of like how don't be a white person writing about racism with your from your black character's perspective. Don't do that, because you're not going to do it right.
Yeah.
So you can have your characters who are very different from you, but don't try to speak from their very specific perspective, which can be maybe an odd line to walk to know if you're doing it right or not, but that's what you got to do so that you don't mess up or fall into tropes that you didn't even know that you were
When you're in
guilty
the
of.
woods, you're in the woods, though, right? You're like, I'm in this, I'm doing this thing now.
Yeah.
So you just have to be like,
You just have to, you kind of just.
And I think be authentic, right? Just make
Yes.
sure you're coming from an authentic place. And you're not using it as a way to get someone to pick up your book.
Right.
I'm going to do a trans story because it's so cool now, and I'm going to explore trans. You have to be authentic and have the story be authentic, and the character being trans, coming from a perspective that's real, not just this is a trans character. Look at this person. You've got to really think about the character itself.
hell yes.
Okay, great. Thanks for all of our
Thanks, all
panelists
you
coming out.
Guys,
Pride clap, everybody.
great, good clapping.
Good clap.